flight training program. And the recruiter wasn't the best one, but it took about a year of applying, and finally I got accepted to go to the warrant officer program, and was just about ready to go. I was a little bit hesitant to sign the papers, and I had a couple different times postponed the meeting to sign the papers and go into the Army. And that's when my wife actually went into labor 10 weeks early with our first daughter. And and so she went into labor 10 weeks early and got flown by AirMed from Logan down to McCady Hospital. So other than the nurse and everybody's taking care of my wife, and I'm out in the hall talking to the pilot. And I was like, man, what do I got to do? And he's the one that got me, kind of edged me to go to flight school. So I started looking into it. Started out at a flight school that some of you might have heard of, Silver State down in Ogden. I was one of their first students when they first started expanding. And glad to say that I'm the first one to quit as well. So I quit and went down to Quantum Helicopters down in Arizona, down in Chandler. And it was a great decision, great school, very busy, and I had a good time down there. And got done with my ratings pretty quick. I made the decision to go to school full time. So I borrowed a little extra money and just went full time, 6 days a week. And it's good flying weather down there, so I got to fly quite a bit. And then I finished up, I had my CFI check ride on Friday, and Saturday morning I went into the school with my shorts and a t-shirt and my sandals on, and took my resume in there and dropped it on our chief pilot's desk because she's never there on Saturdays. And as I was coming out, she went in and saw my resume and then came running out and asked me to come in. I had my daughter, who was just a couple months old at the time, and took her, and so I was in there with my shorts and a t-shirt having my first job interview. So I don't suggest that. It's probably not the best way to get a job, but it happened to work out for me at the time. So then I taught there. Again, that was kind of the hype, you know, when everything was going good. Everybody was giving away money to go to school. So there was a lot of students, and I was very busy. I worked 6 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day, and flew my 1,000 hours in about 10 months. So I was pretty busy, and a lot thinner than I am now because I never ate stuff like that. But it was a good experience. When I started getting 1,000 hours, I started looking into jobs, and my dream job at the time was to go up to Alaska and fly tours. And I started looking into that, and my wife was pregnant with our second kid, and up in Alaska they only pay about $1,500 a month for your first season, but they give you room and board if you're single, if you want to stay in the bunkhouse with all the pilots. So we thought, well, maybe we could do that. Maybe we could, maybe my wife can live with her parents or whatever, but it was kind of right in the middle when the baby was due, so we decided not to do that. So I looked at a couple other options, and I'm sure you guys know what some of the options are at 1,000 hours, but I looked into the Gulf a little bit, and then decided on Papillon Helicopters out of Las Vegas. So that way we could move everybody over there, move the whole family over there, and started flying tours. And there's a couple different options there. You can either do a 7-on, 7-off schedule. And a lot of people that don't live there will do that because you can fly for 7 days and then have 7 days off and go back home. And they also have jump seat privileges, so you can kind of do, whatever you want there and fly back and forth for free. But I elected to do a 4 days on and 3 days off schedule, and then I worked 2 of my days off overtime. There was a lot of need for overtime, so I worked, again, still working, keeping up the 6 days a week thing, and really enjoyed that job. One of the things I'll talk about in a minute, or I'll mention it now, but kind of one of the big hurdles out there in the helicopter industry is as we go through flight school, we're all excited to go fly. Everybody loves to go fly. If there's not anybody here that doesn't love to fly, then probably go somewhere else. But we love to fly, and as students, we're so excited. We get that first job, and then, like at Papillon, it's the same flight every day, sometimes 4 times a day. So you're doing that same flight, and you go up and you take off, you fly past the same things, you see the same things, you climb to the same altitude, you're saying the same things, you know, giving your tour, all that stuff. And so then really quick, people start to get kind of negative about it. Man, this is horrible, I hate my job kind of thing. But I was on the opposite end. I really love that job. And it's a good opportunity to build a lot of hours. And also, it's a good opportunity to really practice and get good at what you've learned how to do. You know, you get to where you have certain checkpoints that you have to be at certain altitudes, and you get to where you can kind of raise the collective and set an airspeed, and you'll be right at that altitude by the time you get there. I had it to where I could, at one point in the Grand Canyon, you'd start your descent and go down about 4,000 feet and land, and I could lower the collective and not touch it again the whole time until after I was on the ground. So you kind of practice those things, and that really gets your skills up there. And you know, depending on your attitude, you can either go through and get another 1,000 hours and not learn anything, or you can learn quite a bit. And a lot of those operations, you know, the lead pilot will do kind of your weather brief for you in the morning, and there's not really a whole lot of thinking involved if you don't want to think. So if you go there and you don't have a good attitude and you don't make the most of it, you're not going to learn a whole lot. You'll have another 1,000 hours, but you're not going to learn a whole lot. So kind of push yourself, you know, to keep going. You have to fight the boredom and overcome some of those things. But for me, it was a great job. After about 8 months of being there, I was made the lead pilot, and I got to go back to doing some instruction. And I loved instruction. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really liked that. And so I started hiring and teaching the new hires and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. Did a lot of extra things. But then when you know, the next milestone everybody looks for is, okay, got to get 2,000 hours. Once I get my 2,000 hours, then I'm golden. And I kind of jumped on it quick. Right at 2,000 hours, I was ready to leave, and we were ready to get closer to home, back up where there's snow and stuff. I was a little bit tired of the desert, but so I started looking around at new jobs and put out my application a few places. And as kind of a long shot, I sent my resume to Maryland State Police to go out there and fly their Dauphines. And they called me out for an interview, and I went out there and interviewed with them. And it was a new experience, first job interview I ever had, where I had to take a lie detector test. And so I went out there, interviewed, and was really excited. I was like, man, this is going to be the best job in the whole world. And a couple days later, they called me and offered me the job, and I was so excited. But we started looking at housing and things like that, and they didn't pay a whole lot. And so I had sent my resume a couple other places, and one place was up in Casper, Wyoming, flying live flight. And so they actually started me out at $3,000 more a year, plus living in Casper versus Baltimore. So a little bit different. Plus, up at Casper, they paid my moving expenses, everything for me to go up there. And so that's why I decided not to do Maryland State Police. And then I went to Casper, Wyoming. But I went to Casper with kind of a goal in mind. They were at the time operated by a company called CJ Systems, but they were in the process of being bought out by Air Methods. And Air Methods is the largest EMS operator in the U.S., probably the world, I think, is what they say. But I knew that Air Methods had the contract to Air Med at the University of Utah. And so I had tried Air Med a couple times and didn't get the job because I kept getting beat out by people that were transferring from other bases. So I went to Casper, and then with the idea that we would transfer down to Air Med. Casper was a good experience. Wasn't the best place to live, to be honest, but you know, it was kind of a different feel. It was cold, and it was the high desert plains, you know, pretty flat, really windy, and the people there weren't as nice as some of the other places that we had lived. Sorry if you're from Casper or like that place. Not that I hate it. I had a really good time. My wife didn't have as much fun as me, but it was a good job for me. I flew a twin. That was my first twin, and the only one that I've actually flown. I flew a Bell 222, kind of an ancient aircraft. But got some good experience there, and also got some experience flying with night vision goggles. And so that was a good opportunity. Also had my first and only incident. Talk about that real quick. But we had a hospital helipad that was up on top of the parking garage, and it was 7 stories up. And wasn't uncommon to get 100-mile-an-hour winds up there. But I was starting up one day to take the helicopter over for maintenance, and it was about 30-mile-an-hour winds, no big deal for the Bell 222. And went to start it up, and I got hit by a microburst. And the whole aircraft shook and moved back about 6 inches. That's an 8,000-pound helicopter moving about 6 inches, and it made the blade flap down and hit the tailboard. So that's my only incident there. But that was a good experience. But we were only there for about 10 months, and then an opening came up at AirMed, and I was able to transfer. At the same time, we'd kind of always had it in the back of our minds that we'd like to make it up to Idaho, either Idaho Falls or Pocatello, flying up there. So we were in the moving truck, driving from Wyoming down to Utah, and I got a call from Omni Flight, who was taking over the contract up in Idaho Falls, and they offered me a job while I was in the moving truck coming down here. And I was like, oh man, now what do I do? I got to make this decision like right now. I'm supposed to start tomorrow, kind of thing. So I elected to go to AirMed because they offered me a little bit more money and stuff like that. But that was a great opportunity at AirMed. They've got 4 helicopters and 16 pilots, and so there's always stuff going on. Then after that, I was working up there, and I worked there for about 2 years, and I thought that was my dream job. I thought I was set in my career. That's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Really liked the job, but there were some cons that we'll talk about in a minute. But one of our pilots up there was flying part-time for the Utah Highway Patrol, and he came to me when Terry Mercer, one of the full-time pilots there, retired, and he said, hey, he's retiring, this is the opportunity of a lifetime, you should take it. And so I started looking into it, and at first I was like, man, that's not what I want to do. Because at first it was like the only thing I saw was it's a pay cut, like, man, I got to take a cut in pay to take this job. But then I started looking into it, and they give me a car to drive, pay for my gas, and gave me better benefits, gave me a retirement. As some of you may know, that's not very common for helicopter jobs. And so I was like, man, in 20 years I could retire. I'll be 48 years old and retired, and then I can go do whatever job I want after that. And so then I was like, okay. So then I did it, and I took kind of a leap of faith and took the pay cut and went over to the Utah Highway Patrol. And it's been the best decision I've ever made as far as my career goes. It's awesome. They sent me to police academy starting last August. I finished up in November, and then have worked on the road for a little bit. Got to chase down a couple bad guys and stuff like that. Just kind of get orientation. It was only about 2 weeks, so it wasn't really that much, but it was a lot of fun. And then I started flying full time for the Highway Patrol, and we do a wide variety of stuff. I do a lot of stuff with the Division of Wildlife. Since they're a state agency, we're a state